picture this scenario, right? Because it's something almost every single person listening has experienced at least once.
Oh, absolutely. Probably more times than they'd like to admit.
Right. So you wake up, the alarm is just blaring, you roll over, and, before your feet even hit the floor, you blindly grab your phone off the nightstand.
The classic, completely automatic morning routine.
Exactly. And the screen brightness burns your eyes a little bit, but you open your banking app out of sheer habit. And staring back at you is a balance that is dramatically lower than you need it to be to cover the bills, are due this week.
Yeah, or, maybe you don't look at your bank account. Maybe you open your email instead.
Oh, yeah. The dreaded inbox check.
Right, and sitting right there at the top is a message from your boss, sent at like 11:30 p.m. the night before.
Which is always a terrible sign.
Always. And it contains this vague but super aggressive critique of your recent project.
Instantly, this whole biological cascade begins. I mean, your chest tightens. Your stomach ties itself into that very specific familiar knot.
Yep, the cortisol hits.
Exactly. A heavy sigh just escapes your lungs. And the very first thought that flashes through your consciousness is just this absolute statement like, I am completely broke, or this job is actively destroying my life.
We have all been marooned on that exact island of panic.
Totally.
Right.
You are, in that split second, entirely consumed by the physical reality sitting right in front of you.
And I think it's important to state right up front that that reaction is an incredibly common, biologically appropriate response.
Right. Your body's just doing what it's supposed to do.
Exactly. Your nervous system is doing exactly what millions of years of evolution designed it to do. It perceives a threat in your immediate environment.
Even if it's just a digital threat on a screen.
Right. In this case, it's a digital threat that represents a threat to your shelter or your livelihood, so it floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. You are basically being primed to either fight a predator or run from one.
But there is no predator to punch here.
No, there isn't.
And you definitely can't outrun an email.
No, you cannot.
And here is where the whole situation becomes just incredibly frustrating. Think about the advice you always hear when you are trapped in that specific anxiety loop.
Oh, the standard self-help advice.
Right. What does every article, every motivational speaker, every well-meaning friend tell you to do?
They just say, just think positive.
Just think positive. They instruct you to use affirmations. So out of sheer desperation, you try it.
You stand there in your bathroom, gripping the edges of the sink.
Looking at your own tired reflection in the mirror, and you try repeating a mantra like, I am successful, I am wealthy, I am at peace.
And you might say it, 50 times?
Easily 50 times.
Uh-huh.
But let's be entirely honest with ourselves here. It feels completely fake.
Oh, 100%.
It feels like you are attempting to just flat out lie to your own reflection.
Well, the sensation of lying happens because, to your neurological machinery in that specific moment, it literally is a lie.
Right.
You are attempting to introduce this totally foreign, contradictory data point into a system that is currently locked in a state of high alert survival.
So your brain actively argues back against the affirmation.
Oh, it fights it aggressively.
Like, while you are standing there chanting, I am wealthy, your brain is basically holding up a mental itemized spreadsheet.
Exactly. It points to the mortgage, the credit card debt, the empty checking account, and just says, no, we are not.
So you become trapped in this exhausting, cyclical battle. You're reacting to the physical world, feeling completely powerless to change it, and trying to overwrite that grim reality with sheer emotional force.
But the positive words just bounce right off the armor of your anxiety.
They really do. Why is that? Why doesn't it work?
The effort bounces off because the fundamental mechanism being used is totally incorrect. It is, it's akin to standing in your kitchen and trying to use your television remote control to change the temperature on your oven.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. The intention to change the environment is there. The physical effort is certainly there. You're pressing the buttons.
But the frequency of the tool you are using is completely mismatched to the machine you're actually trying to operate.
Precisely. And that mismatched frequency is essentially the entire mission of our focused discussion today.
Right, because today we're analyzing this fascinating, highly detailed stack of anonymous documents.
Yeah, this collection of manuals and research papers is focused purely on the intersection of behavioral psychology, neurology, and mental programming.
The goal of this session is to uncover the actual mechanical process of how the human mind accepts and integrates instructions.
And we are going to explore why almost everything you have likely been taught about, manifesting or positive thinking is probably operating on the completely wrong neurological frequency.
The core thesis presented across all these independent materials is just profound. The deep creative part of your subconscious mind.
It does not respond to vague wishes.
Right. It does not respond to emotional desperation. And it certainly does not respond to you shouting positive words over a chaotic state of internal panic.
The subconscious requires clear, highly precise instructions.
However, the critical variable that most people completely miss is that those instructions must be delivered at a very specific, biologically measurable brain rhythm.
Exactly. If the brain is not in the correct electrical state, the instruction is simply discarded as background noise.
So, to understand why our daily affirmations fail so spectacularly, we first have to examine the actual environment in which we are trying to deploy them.
Yeah, the documents introduce this fascinating philosophical and really mechanical divide. They separate our experience into the world of effects versus the world of causes.
Let's unpack that. The world of effects is basically the physical reality you navigate every day, right?
Right. The bank account balance, the angry email, the traffic on the highway, even the physical condition of your own body.
All that is categorized as unintelligent and malleable.
It is merely a world of effects. Think of it as a giant passive projector screen.
I love the analogy the sources use here. It's brilliant.
It's a television analogy.
Yes. They suggest that when a television image is broken, say, the picture is distorted or the colors are all inverted, you don't attempt to fix it by taking a paintbrush and painting directly onto the glass screen.
That would be absurd. It would just be a temporary, messy illusion.
Right. To actually change the picture, you have to go behind the screen.
You have to open the back of the television, get into the wires, the circuits, the motherboards.
And that internal circuitry represents the world of causes. That is the mental and neurological realm.
But when we wake up and immediately panic about the bank account, we are basically furiously painting on the glass screen, wondering why the broadcast isn't changing.
We allow the effect to dictate our internal cause. We're just stuck in a state of constant reaction.
So, to transition from a state of reacting to a state of active programming, you must first understand the voltage of the biological machine you are operating.
The texts break down human brain activity into 4 primary gears, measured as electrical frequencies. And I want to get into what those frequencies actually mean.
Sure, because brainwaves is a term that gets thrown around a lot in pop psychology.
Exactly. But we are talking about millions of neurons firing in synchrony, creating an actual electrical pulse that can be measured by an EEG machine in cycles per second, or hertz.
Right. So the first gear, where most of us live our daily lives, is beta.
Beta. And what is the frequency there?
Beta operates at an electrical frequency of roughly 14 to 21 cycles per second, sometimes even higher during moments of extreme panic.
This is your standard waking state.
Yeah, it's the realm of action, critical thinking, defense, and strict logic.
Like when you are analyzing a complex spreadsheet, or when you are navigating a really busy intersection.
Or when you're actively worrying about that late-night email from your boss. Your brain is just pulsing in beta.
The sources make a rather grim observation here, too. They note that roughly 95% of the adult population basically spends their entire waking lives trapped in this specific frequency.
It's true. They wake up in beta, work in beta, stress in beta, and eventually just exhaust themselves right into sleep.
Now, beta is fundamentally a survival state, right?
Absolutely. It is an excellent, totally necessary frequency for keeping you safe from physical harm and executing complex external tasks.
But the catch is, it is strictly an output frequency.
Yes. Your cognitive energy is directed outward, constantly scanning the physical environment for problems to solve or threats to avoid.
And this perfectly explains the complete failure of the bathroom mirror affirmations.
It really does.
The texts use a highly mechanical comparison here that I found so helpful. They say, trying to program your subconscious mind with new beliefs while you're stuck in beta is like trying to write new data onto a computer hard drive.
While it's currently spinning at absolute maximum RPMs.
Right. All while you are holding a high-powered industrial magnet right against the casing.
The internal environment is simply too chaotic. In beta, you are projecting energy outward. You cannot program inward.
Your logical mind is essentially acting as a highly aggressive nightclub bouncer.
I love that comparison, the bouncer.
Yeah, and its primary job is to just question and reject any new information that doesn't perfectly match the current physical reality.
So speaking to your subconscious while you're in beta is basically like shouting at someone through a thick, soundproof wall of ballistic glass.
They might see your mouth moving.
They might see you gesturing wildly in frustration, but all they register is this muffled, incoherent noise.
The actual data of the message does not penetrate the barrier. But there is good news. The texts outline a second gear.
Yes, a state called alpha.
Alpha. How does that differ from beta?
Well, alpha operates at a slower rhythm, typically between 7 and 14 cycles per second. And this frequency is the actual realm of creation.
This is the state where the barrier to the subconscious can actually be bypassed.
Exactly. In alpha, that soundproof ballistic glass is retracted. You transition from a state of pure output to a state capable of receiving input.
You essentially gain the ability to alter your own source code.
Right. And just to ensure we have the complete neurological map before we move forward, the texts do mention two even deeper levels of brain activity.
Right. Theta and delta.
Yeah. Theta pulses at 4 to 7 cycles per second. This is associated with deep, profound intuition, light sleep, and biological healing.
And below that is delta.
Right. Operating at 0.5 to 4 cycles per second, which represents deep, completely dreamless sleep.
But alpha is our primary target for conscious programming. Alpha is the workshop.
It serves as the workshop because it is the specific biological state where the logical mind, that internal bouncer that constantly doubts, analyzes, and criticizes your every thought, finally steps down from its post.
It takes a break.
It does. And simultaneously, the deep mind, the part of your neurology that indiscriminately accepts, obeys, and creates based on the instructions it is given, steps forward to take the controls.
Okay, so if beta is a locked, soundproof room, the immediate practical question for anyone listening is, how do we actually turn the knob and enter alpha?
Because we have all tried to simply relax.
Right. And usually, telling yourself to relax just makes you hyper-aware of exactly how tense you are.
Or you overshoot the target entirely and just fall asleep on the couch.
Exactly. So how do we get there reliably?
Well, the texts are incredibly firm on demystifying this state. Alpha is not a mystical trance.
It's not a fantasy state where you float away and passively daydream about winning the lottery.
No, not at all. It is a highly functional, biologically grounded level of consciousness. It is a mechanical operation.
You are essentially shifting gears in a manual transmission vehicle.
Yes. The documents provide a very specific step-by-step entry protocol to force that biological shift consciously.
So you aren't just relying on positive thoughts to get there.
Exactly. You are sending physical, somatic signals to your brain to literally change its electrical output.
Okay, let's go through the steps. What's the first one?
The first step in this protocol is remarkably simple but mechanically vital. It involves the elevated gaze.
The elevated gaze. Let's examine the physical action here. You close your eyes, and behind your closed eyelids, you raise your eyes slightly upward.
Right. It's just a shift of a few degrees, as if you were trying to look at the inside of your own forehead.
Now, a skeptic would immediately ask, why does a minor physical eye movement do absolutely anything to alter brainwaves?
It's a fair question. The mechanism is actually tied to the oculomotor nerve and its connection to brainwave states.
Okay, how does that work?
Elevating your gaze in this specific manner triggers a hardwired neurological reflex. When you roll your eyes upward, you are replicating the exact ocular position your eyes naturally assume when you enter REM sleep and begin dreaming.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So by doing this consciously while awake, you are sending a silent biological signal to the brain, specifically to the critical beta-dominant regions.
You are essentially telling the brain, we are entering a state of controlled imagination. The survival systems can stand down.
It is a deliberate biohack. You are using the physical positioning of the body to trick the brain into shifting its electrical frequency.
That is fascinating. So that elevated gaze is step one. Step two moves into functional breathing.
Yes. And I appreciate how blunt the source material is here.
Right. It explicitly states, I am not interested in beautiful breathing.
Yeah.
I am interested in functional breathing.
Because the goal here is not to master complex, multi-stage yogic breath work that requires intense concentration. The goal is classical conditioning.
So what exactly is the protocol dictating?
It dictates that you inhale deeply, and on the controlled exhale, you release a specific internal command. Mentally, without moving your lips or vocal cords, you spell out the word, A-L-P-H-A.
You simply think the individual letters as the air leaves your lungs.
Exactly. Because each time you execute that exhale and mentally sound out that specific sequence of letters, your brain begins to forge an association.
It links the internal acoustic signature of that word with the physical sensation of the body relaxing, right?
Right. And the brainwave frequency lowering. Over time, through sheer repetition, the body begins to respond automatically to the cue.
The word itself becomes the trigger.
Yes. So the eyes are elevated, the breathing is steady, and you are mentally spilling ALPHA on the exhale.
And then comes step 3, which is what the texts call the internal descent.
This requires a subtle shift in mental focus. You are not trying to force a vivid visualization yet. You are simply imagining your center of awareness dropping down one level.
Like stepping down a physical mental staircase.
Some people use that, yeah. While others just feel a sensation of sinking slightly inward away from the skin.
The objective is basically to withdraw your sensory bandwidth from the external environment.
Right. The sounds of the house, the temperature of the room.
And direct that processing power entirely into your internal psychological space.
Exactly.
Now, if I am sitting in my living room attempting this protocol, my immediate skeptical pushback is going to be, how do I know I'm not just making this up?
Sure.
Like, how do I know I am actually in an alpha frequency and not just sitting in beta with my eyes closed, pretending to be relaxed? What does alpha actually feel like to the biological organism?
Well, the documents provide a really clear checklist of biological indicators. When your brainwave frequency successfully drops into the alpha range, the physical body undergoes measurable changes.
What's the first sign?
First, your limbs will feel noticeably heavier, as a mild form of the muscle paralysis that occurs during sleep actually begins to engage.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, your respiration rate will naturally slow down and deepen without any conscious effort on your part to control it.
And third,
Third, and perhaps most noticeably, the volume of your inner voice, that relentless chattering monologue that critiques everything you do, will lower significantly in volume.
it just gets quieter.
Much quieter. And finally, your perception of time often distorts. Like 10 minutes might feel like 2.
So if you experience even one of these biological markers, the door is open.
You have bypassed the bouncer. You are inside the workshop.
You have turned the key, but gaining access to the alpha state is just the preliminary phase. You are standing in the doorway.
Right.
Once that soundproof glass is removed and your subconscious mind is sitting there, totally receptive, waiting for input, what exactly do you say to it?
And that right there is the pivotal point of failure for most people.
Because the subconscious mind does not process information the way the conscious mind does?
Not at all. It does not obey vague intentions, it does not comprehend incomplete phrases, and it completely ignores desperate wishes.
So you cannot just drop into alpha, feel perfectly relaxed, and think, I really hope the company gives me that promotion next month.
Doing so would be entirely useless. A statement like that is merely a beta-level anxiety wrapped in a polite request.
So how do we successfully deliver a command?
To understand that, we have to examine the mechanical differences between the right and left hemispheres of the brain, as outlined in the research.
Looking at the hemispheric divide in these documents, the left brain appears to act essentially as a historian and a surveyor. Right?
Exactly. It deals with physical sight. It processes the world that has already been materialized.
It looks at the physical bank statement. It reads the physical email.
Right. But the right brain hemisphere, which becomes highly active and accessible when you enter alpha, operates entirely differently.
It deals with abstract desire, internal belief, and mental creation.
Yes. The left hemisphere is entirely bound by the rules of the physical senses and sequential time. The right hemisphere is not.
Therefore, the act of visualization is not merely daydreaming.
No, it is the deliberate act of transferring an impression from the left brain, the reality you currently know and want to change over to the right brain.
Where the parameters of that reality can be altered, reshaped, and reprogrammed.
You are taking the hardened clay of your daily life and moving it over to the sculptor's table where it becomes soft again.
That is a powerful image. And the texts provide a rigorous, highly specific 5-step instruction protocol for exactly how to sculpt that clay once you have entered alpha.
They do. Step 1 is visualize the end.
You do not visualize the process. You do not visualize the complicated path of how you might achieve the goal.
No, you visualize only the absolute final result.
Furthermore, that end result must be visualized strictly in the present tense.
And this is where countless people sabotage their own programming.
Because the deep subconscious mind has no concept of tomorrow, right?
Exactly. It operates entirely in an eternal now.
So if you visualize a goal as something that is about to happen, or something you will achieve in the future, what happens?
Your subconscious will faithfully execute that exact command. It will keep the event eternally waiting in the future.
It will ensure that the goal is always just one day away, never allowing it to materialize in your present reality.
Yes. So, for example, if the objective is to own a new home, you do not close your eyes and visualize the grueling process of searching through real estate listings.
Or sitting in a bank applying for a mortgage.
Right. You visualize yourself standing in the center of the living room of that specific house, and the house is already
A
yours.
transaction is over. You own it right now.
Precisely. Which leads directly into step 2. Add one sensory detail.
This detail makes perfect sense from a neurological standpoint. The subconscious mind needs a physical anchor to process an imagination as a reality.
Because the central nervous system does not have eyes.
Right. The brain sits in absolute darkness inside the vault of your skull. It only understands what is happening in the outside world through the chemistry of sensory input.
So you must provide the brain with a specific data point and knows exactly how to process. A vague image of a house isn't enough.
You need to imagine the rough texture of the brick exterior, or the distinct smell of fresh paint in the hallway.
Or the very specific sound of your knuckles tapping against the heavy wooden dining table in that new house.
It must be something small, but fiercely specific.
This forces the sensory cortex to light up, tricking the brain into processing the visualization not as a fantasy, but as a real, current, physical experience.
You feed it the sensory data, and the brain releases the corresponding neurochemistry to match it. Which brings us to step 3. Activate matching emotion.
Emotion is the chemical amplifier. It is the biological stamp of importance.
When you attach a strong emotion to an image, you're basically telling the subconscious, this specific data packet is critical.
Yes, this is the new reality we must align all our biological and behavioral resources to achieve.
An empty clinical picture isn't enough to rewrite the code. You have to genuinely generate the feeling of relief, or the intense gratitude, or the deep joy that would naturally occur if you had already achieved that end state.
And once that emotional peak is reached, you immediately lock the program into place with step 4, the power phrase.
You seal the entire vision with a definitive, non-negotiable command.
The texts recommend using the specific phrase, "This is so."
This is so. There are no alternatives offered. There's no room for internal debate.
You are not politely asking the universe to do you a favor. You are issuing a direct operational command to your own biological machinery. This is so.
And then you must instantly defend that command using step 5, avoid sabotage.
Yes, you mentally state, "It is done."
This final phrase is designed as a firewall, isn't it?
It is. It blocks the critical logical beta mind from jumping back into the driver's seat the split second the visualization ends and asking destructive questions.
Like, but wait, how am I actually going to afford this?
Or, what if the market crashes? How long is this going to take?
If you allow that insidious doubt to creep in during the immediate aftermath of the visualization, you are essentially highlighting the new program you just wrote and hitting the delete key.
Exactly. Stating, "It is done," closes the cognitive loop. It signals to the system that the programming session is over and the instructions are final.
There is a detail buried in the texts regarding this phase that I found absolutely fascinating. It revolves around the concept of the 10-second sacred window.
Ah, yes.
After you finish the 5-step protocol, you do not just snap your eyes open, jump off the couch, and immediately check your phone.
The protocol demands that you remain entirely still, maintaining the alpha state for exactly 10 more seconds. You sit in absolute mental silence.
What is the biological necessity behind those 10 seconds of silence?
Well, this represents the critical integration phase. The human brain processes millions of bits of sensory information every single second, but your conscious mind can only handle about 40 bits.
Right. And the filter that decides what information gets through is called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Think of the RAS as the ultimate nightclub bouncer for your brain.
Another bouncer.
Yep. During those 10 seconds of silence, the internal chemistry you generated during the visualization is settling.
The RAS is actively updating its parameters based on the new VIP list you just handed it.
The images, the sensory details, the emotions, and the commands are merging into a single, cohesive neural map.
So if you jump up immediately, you are essentially snatching the VIP list out of the bouncer's hand before he even has a chance to read it.
That is a highly accurate analogy. If you disrupt that 10-second window with sudden external stimulus, you abort the installation process. The program fails to save.
But if you respect the silence, when you open your eyes after those 10 seconds, biologically and neurologically, You're literally not the exact same person you were 3 minutes ago.
Your reticular activating system now has a completely new set of instructions for what opportunities, ideas, and resources it needs to flag in your environment.
This protocol is incredibly powerful, but we have to address the practical reality of daily life. We do not always have the luxury of time or a quiet room to sit down, roll our eyes upward, and run through a deep, multi-step visualization matrix.
Modern life is loud, chaotic, and incredibly demanding.
The authors of the documents anticipated this reality, which is why they devoted significant attention to the ultimate biological shortcut.
It is a period of time where your conscious resistant beta mind is guaranteed to step completely out of the way every single day.
The sleep cycle.
Yeah.
The night shift.
Yes.
The material in this section completely alters how you view the simple act of going to bed. The sources state an uncompromising biological fact. The subconscious mind never sleeps.
Not for a single second.
While your conscious awareness goes offline, your subconscious mind basically punches in for its primary work shift.
For those 7 or 8 hours, it is not idle. It is actively organizing information, consolidating memories, processing complex decisions, and reinforcing behavioral habits.
But the critical question is, what dictates the agenda for that entire 8-hour shift? How does the subconscious know what to work on?
It bases its entire nightly workload on the last dominant mental pattern it received right before you cross the threshold from waking into deep sleep.
This mechanism explains so much about chronic stress. It was a massive realization for me.
It's eye-opening, isn't it?
It really is. This is the exact mechanical reason why lying in bed worrying guarantees that you will wake up feeling exhausted, anxious, and defeated.
It has absolutely nothing to do with bad luck or the alignment of the stars.
It is a case of accidental, highly effective mental programming. You lay in the dark, stressed out about a looming deadline, generated the potent emotion of fear, and then allowed yourself to drift into sleep.
You literally handed your subconscious a file labeled fear, failure, and problems and issued the silent command. Work on amplifying and finding evidence for this for the next 8 hours.
It is the ultimate form of self-sabotage, and it is performed nightly by millions of people who have no idea they are operating the machinery in reverse.
However, you can deliberately hijack this biological mechanism to your advantage by implementing the pre-sleep technique.
The technique itself is surprisingly simple, but the rules governing it are incredibly strict.
Very strict. When you lie down to sleep, you do not try to force your body to relax. You do not try to control your breathing. You simply let the body undergo its natural shutdown sequence.
And then?
Then, mentally, without moving your lips, you begin to count slowly backward. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
During the countdown, you are not visualizing goals, right? You are not trying to picture a house.
No, you are merely observing your mind naturally quieting down as it approaches the hypnagogic state, the twilight edge of sleep. And then when you reach the number 1, you deliver the critical instruction.
You must formulate one single concise instruction. You cannot provide a laundry list of desires.
The subconscious requires sharp focus here. It must be one clear instruction, stated in the present tense.
An example from the text is something like, "My mind works continuously to find the most elegant solution to this project."
Or, I wake up filled with absolute clarity and energy.
But the phrasing is less important than the rule of delivery, isn't it?
Much less important. The absolute most important rule of the pre-sleep technique is, do not decorate the instruction.
Don't overdo it.
Right. Do not try to force an immense emotional strain trying to feel it deeply. Do not start analyzing whether it will work or trying to justify it to yourself. You state the instruction exactly one time, and then you completely let it go.
You literally just turn over and go to sleep.
You go to sleep. The texts emphasize repeatedly that attempting to consciously control the outcome or obsessing over how the solution will present itself ruins the entire process.
Because the subconscious mind operates most efficiently when it is not being micromanaged by the conscious ego.
It seems similar to delegating a complex task to a highly competent, specialized assistant. You write the instruction, you hand them the file, and you trust them to execute it.
If you stand directly over their shoulder, watching their screen, constantly asking, "Did you figure it out yet? How are you going to do it? What's your first step?" They cannot possibly do their job.
The micromanagement causes the system to freeze.
So when you surrender the instruction and go to sleep, how do the results usually arrive?
Well, the results of this night shift programming rarely arrive in the exact format you might expect. The solution might manifest as a sudden, brilliant idea while you are taking a shower the next morning.
Or it might surface as a quiet, undeniable sense of certainty regarding a difficult decision you've been avoiding.
Or it might materialize as a seemingly random coincidence during your day that provides the exact resource or contact you needed.
Now, what if you have a highly specific problem? Not just a general desire for clarity, but a distinct, tangled issue you need an answer to.
The texts outline an entirely separate, almost bizarrely specific protocol for this exact scenario. It is called the glass of water technique.
This technique represents a fascinating application of behavioral psychology, leveraging the physical environment and a somatic action to create a powerful psychological anchor.
It really does.
I need you to break down the mechanics of this because on the surface, reading it for the first time, it sounds a bit like an old superstition.
I can see why it would sound that way.
The text says to take a glass of water before bed, hold it with both hands, and keep your fingers slightly separated to keep the energy circuit open. Is that actual bioelectricity or is that pseudoscience?
It is important to look past the older terminology and focus on the behavioral mechanism here. The instruction to hold the glass with both hands and consciously separate the fingers is a pattern interrupt.
Okay, a pattern interrupt.
It is a highly unusual physical posture. By forcing you to hold the glass in a deliberate, unnatural way, it prevents the action of drinking water from becoming a mindless, automatic habit.
It forces acute mindfulness and physical grounding.
Exactly, which focuses the brain's attention squarely on the ritual being performed.
Okay, so the unusual grip is a somatic anchor, forcing your brain to pay attention.
Right. And once you are holding the glass, you close your eyes, elevate your gaze upward, just like we do in the alpha entry protocol, and you drink exactly half of the water in the glass.
And while you are physically swallowing that half of the water, you mentally state a very precise, rigid phrase.
The phrase is, "This is all I need to do to find the solution to the problem I have in mind."
You do not attempt to solve the problem at that moment. You do not review the problem.
No, you simply state the phrase, place the half-empty glass on your nightstand, and go to sleep.
What exactly is happening neurologically here? Why the half glass?
What you are executing is a psychological concept related to the Zeigarnik effect. You are creating an intentional open loop in your brain.
Oh, open loop.
You have initiated a highly specific sequence of actions, tied it to a problem, but intentionally left the physical sequence unfinished.
And the human brain, particularly the subconscious, fundamentally despises open loops, right? It aggressively seeks closure and completion.
Therefore, while your conscious mind cycles down into theta and delta sleep, your deep mind treats that unresolved problem as an urgent, active task that must be solved to close the loop.
You are effectively typing a highly specific search query into a massive internal database, hitting the enter key, and then walking away from the terminal while the mainframe runs the search parameters overnight.
That captures the mechanism perfectly.
And then in the morning.
In the morning, immediately upon waking, you must complete the physical action. You pick up the glass, hold it with the same specific grip, elevate your eyes, drink the remaining half of the water, and repeat the exact same phrase.
This is all I need to do to find the solution to the problem I have in mind.
By drinking the second half, you close the physical loop, which acts as the biological signal for the brain to deliver the data it downloaded overnight.
The answer will then arrive as a sudden flash of insight, a vivid dream you remember, or an event that unfolds during the day.
It is a remarkable mechanical way to bypass the limitations of the logical beta mind, which usually attempts to force solutions through the sheer brute force of anxiety and overthinking.
We have discussed alpha for conscious programming, and we have discussed the night shift for unconscious problem solving. But the documents venture even further.
They do. They describe a state that is significantly deeper than alpha, a state where psychological resistance drops to absolute zero.
The sources refer to this profound depth as the Z state.
If entering alpha is akin to turning over the topsoil in your garden to prepare it for planting, entering the Z state is reaching the rich, dark, perfectly fertile earth deep underneath, where any seed planted takes root instantaneously.
It is the level where the conscious mind's defensive barriers are completely and utterly dissolved. To reach this state, the texts describe a specific mental descent they call the staircase.
This requires that you have already relaxed the physical body and entered the alpha state.
From there, you visualize yourself standing at the top of a 10-step staircase. The details of the staircase don't matter, only the descent.
As you mentally step down to the 9th step, you count backward. 10, 9, 8. With every single step, you must feel your awareness sinking deeper, moving further away from the physical world.
At the bottom of the staircase, the visualization requires you to picture a door representing the entrance to the Z state.
You open the door, step through, and you find yourself in a mental space of infinite, formless stillness.
And once you are standing in that profoundly deep state, the soil is incredibly fertile. But you cannot simply throw seeds around randomly. The texts introduce a fascinating limitation here called the Rule of Six.
This specific rule answers a question that plagues almost everyone who attempts mental programming. We're constantly told by modern self-help gurus to repeat an affirmation hundreds, sometimes thousands of times.
But the clinical analysis in these texts argues fiercely against that brute force high-volume approach.
It does.
Which begs the question, why 6? What is the biological significance of that number? Why not just hammer the phrase into your brain 100 times to be absolutely sure?
The analysis reveals a complex relationship with habituation. The subconscious mind does indeed learn through repetition, but there is a precise mathematical sweet spot for synaptic facilitation.
Think of it like applying paint to a wall.
Right. If you apply only one extremely thin coat of paint, it won't cover the old color. The old reality bleeds through.
But if you furiously apply 10 thick coats of paint without letting it cure, the paint becomes heavy, it runs, it drips, and eventually peels off the wall entirely.
6 coats, applied deliberately, bond perfectly to the surface. Neurologically, if you repeat an intention too few times, it fails to leave a structural imprint on the neural pathways.
But if you repeat it dozens of times, the conscious mind becomes bored, habituation sets in, the brain starts ignoring the signal as background noise, or worse, the logical mind wakes back up and starts arguing against the statement.
6 repetitions imprint the message with maximum impact without triggering the brain's resistance mechanisms.
So you are standing in the stillness of the Z state, and you repeat a very specific intention exactly 6 times. The recommended phrase provided in the documents is, "Everything I desire is already finding its way to me. I am open to receive with gratitude and trust."
Pay close attention to the psychological progression built into that phrase. By the time you reach the 5th and 6th repetition, your internal neurochemistry shifts.
You are no longer holding a posture of asking or wanting or begging. You have transitioned into a state of absolute knowing.
You seal the entire process with the emotion of gratitude. The texts emphasize strongly that gratitude is not just a polite emotion. It is the structural bridge between mental intention and physical reality.
Generating gratitude shifts your biology from a state of waiting for a future event to happen into a state of actively receiving a current event.
Because your brain registers gratitude as the biological proof that the event has already occurred.
Gratitude creates a sense of neurological closure and certainty. Once that certainty is established, the subconscious can immediately begin working to materialize the circumstances to match the emotion.
Now, taking 20 minutes to slowly descend a 10-step mental staircase into the Z state is an incredible practice, but practically speaking, you cannot exactly do that when your boss is aggressively questioning you in a boardroom.
Or when you are stuck in gridlock traffic and your blood pressure is spiking.
The researchers understood that limitation, which is why the texts offer an instant biological trigger designed specifically for high-stress, everyday use.
They call it the 3-finger anchor. This is a tool for immediate eyes-open programming during a crisis.
The biological mechanism here is elegant, relying purely on Hebbian, learning the principle that neurons that fire together wire together.
While you are in a deeply relaxed state in your own home, like alpha or the Z state, you physically bring together the tips of your thumb, index, and middle fingers of either hand.
You hold those 3 fingers together, and you actively program the association. You mentally state the command that every single time you join your fingers in this specific configuration, your mind will instantly drop its frequency and function at this deeper, calmer level of consciousness.
You are intentionally creating a physical shortcut, a somatic bridge, to a specific neurological state.
It is classical Pavlovian conditioning. After several days of practicing this association while in deep meditation, the neural pathway becomes robust.
You can then be sitting in the middle of a chaotic, highly confrontational meeting, feeling your heart rate accelerate. Without closing your eyes, without changing your breathing, you simply press those 3 fingers together under the table.
The somatic trigger fires, the association activates, and your brain instantly drops its electrical frequency.
It is an override switch. Your eyes are open, you are fully engaged in the conversation, but your brain is operating from the calm, creative frequency of alpha.
You
But There is a crucial, non-negotiable warning attached to all of this programming.
That brings us to section 6 of our analysis, protecting the program. Because you can follow all the steps, you can descend the staircase, you can plant the most beautiful, carefully constructed seeds in the hyper-fertile soil of the Z state.
But all of that rigorous effort is completely, utterly wasted if you spend the next 16 hours of your waking day furiously digging those seeds back up and pouring toxic chemicals all over them.
We must address the electrochemical power of spoken words. In our modern culture, we treat our everyday language as if it is harmless, passive observation.
We believe we are merely describing the world around us. We are not.
The subconscious mind has absolutely no sense of humor. It does not understand sarcasm. It cannot process hyperbole or exaggeration.
It processes every piece of data, literally. When you are frustrated in traffic and you say out loud, "This commute is killing me," or when you are stressed at the office and say, "I am scared to death of this upcoming presentation," your brain registers those spoken words not as emotional venting, but as literal, direct biological commands.
The subconscious hears that and says, "Command received." The organism wishes to be sick. And it immediately begins altering your neurochemistry, lowering your immune system response to comply with the instruction you just broadcast.
You are actively, continuously programming against your own biological survival and psychological success.
That is why the texts insist with utmost urgency that you must become an aggressive, uncompromising guardian of your own mind.
They provide a specific active protocol for this defense, the cancel method.
When a destructive, limiting phrase slips out of your mouth, or even if a highly toxic thought just pops into your conscious awareness, you must immediately intercept it.
You catch the thought and say, either mentally or out loud, cancel.
By doing so, you are issuing an immediate system override command to the subconscious, explicitly instructing it to disregard the previous input before it can take root. However, the protocol notes that you cannot simply leave a cognitive void. Nature and neurology abhors a vacuum.
If you rip out a weed, you have to plant something in the hole. Otherwise, another weed grows back instantly. So, you must replace the canceled thought with the desired truth.
If you look at a massive bill on your counter and the thought arises, "I can never afford to pay this," you must intercept it. Cancel. Money flows to me from multiple sources to meet my obligations.
Now, the analytical mind will immediately rebel against this practice. You might think, but that feels like I'm lying to myself. If I am staring at an eviction notice and my bank account is at zero, saying money flows to me feels completely delusional.
I have to push back hard on this exact point. If I am holding an eviction notice, my body is flooded with cortisol. The threat is not abstract, it is a physical reality. I am going to lose my shelter.
I cannot just cancel my way out of an eviction. Doesn't this protocol border on toxic positivity and outright delusion?
That is the most common critique, but it fundamentally misunderstands what the protocol is doing. You are not attempting to pay your rent with the word cancel. You are attempting to protect your cognitive bandwidth.
When you stare at an eviction notice and allow the panic cascade to take over, you trigger a scarcity mindset. Clinical behavioral studies have shown that a state of acute scarcity literally drops a person's functional IQ by up to 13 points.
By allowing the panic, you are shutting down the prefrontal cortex, the exact part of the brain you desperately need online to figure out how to generate the money to pay the rent.
So saying cancel isn't about ignoring the bill. It is about stopping the secondary panic cascade so you keep your problem-solving intelligence intact.
Precisely. It is not about logic. It is not about describing your current physical reality. Remember the foundational principle, that the physical reality is just the projector screen. It is an effect that has already happened.
When you replace the fearful phrase with an abundant phrase, you are working in the world of causes.
You are actively breaking down old neural highways that default to panic and scarcity, and you are laying down new neural highways that orient towards solutions and abundance.
You are consciously overriding the old code to keep your brain functioning optimally. You are flatly refusing to let the effect dictate the cause. It will absolutely feel fake at first because the new neural highway hasn't been built yet. You are driving on dirt.
But every single time you intercept a thought and replace it, you lay down another inch of pavement.
And a massive part of protecting that new, fragile pavement involves adhering to the rule of silence.
This might be the single hardest instruction in the entire document for people to follow. The texts state that the absolute fastest, most efficient way to kill a manifestation or destroy a newly installed mental program is to tell other people about it.
It is a critical, devastating error. The requirement for silence is not about being secretive, mysterious, or elitist. It is entirely about psychological and neurological protection.
Human nature dictates that when you have an exciting new goal, your immediate instinct is to seek social validation. You want to announce it. I'm going to finally start my own business, or I'm going to buy that house.
But the moment you open your mouth and start explaining your internal intention to the external world, what actually happens to the programming?
You are dragging that delicate, newly planted alpha state intention right back out into the harsh glare of the beta state.
You are bringing it into the analytical, conscious minds of the people you are talking to, and by extension, reactivating your own beta state to defend it. Beta is the exact environment where doubt, judgment, fear, and critical analysis thrive.
Their doubt infects your programming. If you tell a friend about your business idea and they say, "Are you sure? The economy is really tough right now and most startups fail," your beta mind immediately starts analyzing their objection.
Suddenly, your pristine alpha programming is corrupted with a massive virus of doubt. You also get a premature dopamine hit just from talking about the goal, which decreases your actual biological drive to achieve it.
The protocol demands that you let the intention run in the background, uninterrupted, unchallenged, and unvocalized. You let the programming do its work in silence. The results will eventually speak for themselves when they materialize in physical reality.
There's one final obstacle to reality programming that the texts address, and it's perhaps the most complicated variable of all: other human beings.
What do you do when your reality is seemingly blocked by the free will of someone else?
A difficult boss who refuses to approve your project? A client who is stalling on a vital contract? Or a partner you are locked in a cycle of constant arguing with?
The immediate default beta response is to try and manipulate the situation physically, to argue louder, to push harder, to send aggressive emails to try and coerce them into agreement.
And the texts point out that applying physical or verbal force only ever creates immediate, equal counterforce. The harder you push, the harder they resist.
Instead of engaging in a beta-level collision, the documents suggest a radical approach, resolving the conflict psychically first before you ever interact with them in the physical world.
Now, the phrase resolving conflict psychically sounds incredibly mystical. If we are staying grounded in behavioral science, how does this actually work?
You are instructed to enter the deep alpha state. In alpha, you visualize the person you are having the severe conflict with, but you intentionally visualize them appearing calm, reasonable, and peaceful.
You are not attacking them in your mental theater. You are not replaying the argument to win it. You are visualizing a rational, calm exchange. You mentally explain your position to them clearly, fairly, and without anger.
And crucially, the rules state you cannot ask for an outcome that harms them or forces them to lose. You must program a win-win solution. You are designing an outcome that benefits both of your realities.
You conclude the visualization by seeing both of you shaking hands or smiling, signifying that an agreement has been reached.
If we look at this through the lens of behavioral biology, it makes perfect sense. By visualizing a peaceful resolution, you are downregulating your own autonomic nervous system. You are deactivating your fight or flight response regarding this person.
The next day, when you interact with them in the physical world, your microexpressions, your body language, and your vocal tonality will be entirely non-threatening.
Their brain's mirror neurons will instantly detect this lack of aggression, and they will subconsciously de-escalate their own defensive posture.
It feels like magic or telepathy, but it's actually just pure behavioral biology. You cleared the path in the mental world of causes. The text suggests running this protocol at night and then simply observing how physical reality begins to mirror the psychic path you cleared the following day.
They will inexplicably be more open and receptive simply because you remove the biological resistance at the source code level.
It requires a profound shift in how we approach interaction, moving from attempting to control the external world to mastering the internal projection.
Bringing this entire massive analysis together, it forces a complete reframing of how we exist in our daily lives. The reality is we're walking around every single day with the most advanced, unimaginably powerful creative equipment in the universe sitting right between our ears.
And yet, for the most part, we are using this extraordinary neurological machinery as a paperweight. Or even worse, we are actively using it to continuously generate anxiety, simulate worst-case scenarios, and reinforce our own limitations.
We are sitting in the projection booth, running horror movies onto the screen of our own reality, and then cowering in the theater seats, terrified of the picture we are broadcasting.
This synthesis of all these behavioral and neurological documents provides a very clear, uncompromising timeline of human reality. The past is simply composed of materialized thoughts. It is the solid, unchangeable consequence of what was once just mental energy.
The present moment is the active, ongoing process of materializing thoughts. And the future. The future is made entirely, 100%, of conceived thoughts that have not yet solidified into matter.
Reality is soft clay, but it hardens incredibly quickly if you do not intentionally shape it. If you refuse to mold it consciously, it will simply take the shape of whatever random beta state stress or fear you happen to be experiencing at the time.
You must choose to step up to the table and be the sculptor rather than the clay.
So I want to leave you with a thought to examine today. Think about the exact life you are living right now. The good elements, the bad elements, the chronic stresses, the sudden joys, the exact balance in your bank account, the specific state of the relationships you hold.
If the physical reality truly has no independent will of its own and is merely a passive projector screen displaying the output of your continuous mental programming,
What is the film you are silently playing in your mind right now?
that is the essential, inescapable question we all must answer.
If your daily reality is faithfully, blindly obeying the last dominant instruction you gave it, regardless of whether you intentionally meant to give that instruction or not, what specific instruction are you going to give it tonight when your head hits the pillow?